Hello everybody, it's Colin Ellis here with your culture briefing for Friday the 28th of October 2022. Just taking a look at the stories in the paper and relating them back to workplace culture and giving some ideas on things you can do. Firstly, I had a question, so before I forget. Someone asked me a question, is London busy? Is everybody back in the office? London's not that busy. If you know London pre-pandemic, it's not really that busy, Jenny, to be honest. And I think, talking to people at the events that I've been to, spoken at, people here, just like everywhere in the world, still trying to figure this kind of hybrid thing out. I think people are still trying to find a bit of a balance. I was talking to a senior business leader the evening before last at an event, and they're thinking about reconfiguring their office space to make it more collaborative. So I gave her some ideas of things that you can do and making sure you've got different kinds of workspaces, not just going open plan or hot desk. These things don't work, people. But ultimately it's about finding what works for you, your team. Flexibility is expected now. It's not nice to have anymore, it's expected. So I guess the short answer is no, it's not as busy as it used to be, not that I was expecting it to. But people still coming in for events, and people loving coming in for events, and people loving reconnecting with people. And actually I think, kind of in my view, and certainly what I've seen this year in Australia and in the UK, is I think people will, when they do come together, there'll be more meaningful interactions. I caught up with a friend for lunch yesterday. I haven't seen him for 20 years. It's a mark of a good culture, by the way. If you can catch up with someone that you've worked with 20 years ago, and you just talk about all of the good that you did, some of the mistakes that you made and the lessons that you learned. Vulnerability is easier for quite different personalities. But it's so good just to kind of talk. And it's not the good old days. It's partly it's the good old days. We weren't bemoaning how much better things were back then. We were just talking about kind of the good times that we had, the things that we learned and what we've gone on to do. So it's not like bad versus good, but I think people are figuring it out. Anyway, enough of that. I can spend more time answering that question. The big story on the front of the paper here is and it will be most of the world, is climate and the climate targets. And now most organisations, in fact pretty much every organisation, should have its own targets, its own goals. And every strategy should contain kind of those ESG, environmental social governance considerations. And it's not something that you should be paying lip service to. Now, how this relates to culture, obviously the social people relates to culture, is how safe is your workplace, how fair and equitable are the conditions for all of the people. And obviously governance is really about the way that you make decisions. It's the way you make decisions to keep things moving. It's the way you prioritise all of your work. So ESG is huge for organisations. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with ESG, it's a kind of a, how would I put it? It's a bit of a mix of the old corporate responsibility and employee health and safety, kind of well-being. It's kind of a mix of all of those things. But every organisation's got a responsibility to do its bit when it comes to the environment. And if they don't, and if you don't, if you're watching this, then you can start to expect pushback from your employees. Generationally, we're moving towards a social culture, a global social culture, where we want to know what you're doing. We want to know that you're doing good in the world. You read the Deloitte Millennial Survey, which they put out every year. Purpose is high. People want to, connect their own purpose to the purpose of the organisation, so that people want to know, what do you stand for? And don't just have a purpose statement. You actually have to live it. And the ESG, that part of the strategy, that's where you demonstrate the good that you're doing in the world. And you've got to set those targets. You've got to make sure you hit them. I was speaking to someone not long ago, and they said, it was at an event, and I said, we talking about, I can't remember what we were talking about, governance I think, and I was talking about ESG. And he said, we have an ESG board that meets once a month. He said, but the irony is they still print packs of information off. I'm like, wow, the irony of that. And it really is as low as that. Of course it's about emissions. Of course it's about understanding kind of your carbon footprint. It's about when to fly, when not to fly. It's about your fleet of vehicles, are they electric, or all of these things. But it's also about the little things. Like, are you still printing stuff off? Like, really? Why are you printing things off? It's been, since tablets became a thing, what was that, like 2009, 10, 9, something like that? It's been possible to do without printing. Anyway, that's one thing. The other thing I'd say about that is, and I wrote about employee activism not long ago, and how it's a part of your working culture. And organisations like Climate Voice, so climatevoice.org, are really rallying employees to put pressure on the organisation. They do lots and lots of good in the world, and what they're doing is they're giving employees the tools to be able to ask questions of their organisations to make sure that they're doing the right thing. So yeah, you might want to check that out. So yeah, that's just a little bit on ESG. It's not something that you can pay lip service to, and governance isn't just simply meeting once a month and talking about stuff. It's actually making some really tough decisions. Right, I'm trying to find the page for my next story, which will be on all the media outlets around the world. And it's your man. Where's the camera? There you go. It's your man who now owns the social media company. I'm not going to talk about that man. What I am going to talk about is mergers and acquisitions, though. And obviously that was a very protracted, painful acquisition. And having worked with lots of organisations who've done mergers or acquisitions, help them with their culture, just want to talk a little bit about that. Now, the normal way, not that guy, he's going to do it differently. I know, just carry the sink into the office. Let that sink in. Not a Canadian. What should work whenever there's a merger or acquisition is kind of the new people when they come in, or new owners. It's really, really important that they don't change anything immediately. They need to take the time to have a look at what works. They need to take the time to probably kind of work closely with people and say, okay, what works, what doesn't work. We just acquired this company. Yes, it might be about results. It might be about being good for humanity, whatever the heck he's talking about. It might be all of that, but also how are you going to maintain all that's good in the culture right now? How are you going to make sure that you make it a safe place for people? How are you going to make sure that you capture all of the things that work well right now? Now, he will make some sweeping changes. He will make them really quickly. That's just the way he does business, and that will cause a lot of unrest. And at that point, people have got a decision to make. Do you stick or do you twist? And it's a tough decision, particularly if you've worked for an organisation for a long, long time. You've seen different iterations. But this is the kind of unenviable position that some employees are put in. It's not the normal way of things. What you would normally do is take between 1 to 3 months, and then you would redefine the culture based on what the vision is of the new owners. Right, so they'll take the time to craft a vision statement. I've worked with organisations to do this, craft a vision statement, and then you'd redefine the culture that you need to become in order to deliver to that vision. It always happens that way around, because if the employees aren't given the opportunity to define the culture, then they're just going to check out of it. And you get this whole kind of quiet quitting, which is a bit of a pushback against kind of some of the nonsense cultural norms. So with any kind of merger or acquisition, it's important to take the time to capture everything that works well. It's to listen, to understand. I talked about this yesterday on the briefing. And then ultimately bring people together to redefine what the culture needs to be in order to be successful in line with that new vision. Hope you've enjoyed today's culture briefing. If you've got any questions, feel free to just drop me a message. See you soon.